Gary, decision also made in the High Court today, has essentially said that it was okay for somebody to be sacked because they tweeted. This was a person who worked for the Department of Home Affairs who tweeted negatively about the federal government's attitudes, policies, systems when it comes to asylum seekers. Interestingly, the constitutional experts, well, when they always say there's a case to answer, the case has now been answered, which is if you work for the government, you can't bag the government on things like this. They can sack you even if you were anonymous. Here's what Ann Toomey had to say. The constitutional expert says, the reality is you should not be judging people by what they say on Twitter, but how they perform their job. If you have a particular view on refugees or climate change, that shouldn't necessarily affect your ability to perform your functions as an apolitical, impartial or efficient public servant. Here's the rub. All of us who have been losing our brain about Israel Folau and his right to be able to say what he wants and what he believes in, and therefore he shouldn't lose his job, we now have to come to the defence of this person, don't we? Because surely, if we're going to say Israel Folau shouldn't lose his job for what he believes in, why should the public servant lose the job for what they believe in, despite the fact I disagree vehemently with somebody who works for the department, bagging the department that they work for? Come on, freedom of speech.
Yeah. OK, fair enough. That's the way you want to go. And guess what, Paul? Go and argue it in the High Court. And I'm sure Folau's people are right now madly rewriting their narrative. But the point here is the other principle, and that is that a person who enters the public service is meant to act without fear or favour and are meant to also give up stuff. They get the privilege of all sorts of things. Public servants have a pretty good lot in life by comparison to a lot of other people in the workforce. Maybe superstar footballers have a better lot in life again. But there's a trade-off, Paul. And if you are going to be in a meeting with a minister discussing a policy matter and then go outside that meeting and then tweet about it under some sort of anonymous thing, that is a breach of trust. And I don't think anybody can operate in that sort of set of circumstances. So Israel Folau hasn't set himself up as an expert on government policy. He's set himself up as an expert on, well, religious things and whatever. You know, he can argue his own case. But I just say, in the case of this, there is a different principle at play here, and that is about without fear or favour. I mean, what if a public servant doesn't like a person and they come before them? If they don't recuse themselves, there's all sorts of things that could occur from time to time, Paul, and I think people have to have a lot more satisfaction that the public service is going to act impartially according to the laws laid down by their political masters, not their own personal ethics. People have... And besides, Paul, tens of thousands of public servants do that every day, and I think it's unfair to them that one person should be able to get away with this kind of blue murder. Yeah, but Stephen Conroy, what am I missing here? If I sit here, I'm saying, I don't like what this woman wrote. There's part of me that because I don't like what I wrote, I say, well, OK, she should lose her job. But if I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks arguing that your view shouldn't dictate your terms of employment, I kind of have to stick up for her, don't I? I mean, Gary makes an excellent point, but... No,
I don't think Gary made an excellent point at all. I think he actually obfuscated the point. I think you are dead right. Whether you agree or disagree with the public servant, there's no suggestion the public servant was in a meeting with a minister and broke trust by going outside and bagging from a conversation. That's just a total furphy Gary just ran then. But I'm concerned... Oh, look, come on, Stephen, stop defending this woke crap. Stephen, the reason they put you and I on is because you talk so much rubbish and I have to sort you out every time you come on this program. The point of the principle is very clear, Stephen. Stop verballing me. If a person turns up... You come on this program always verballing me, Stephen. You said if a person goes into a meeting with a minister and comes out, blah, blah, blah. That is not the circumstances in this case, Gary, and it's a furphy to put it up. I wasn't talking about this case. I was talking about the principle, you fool. You are an idiot, Stephen. You are beyond... Any wonder the Indian is the sort of mess it is. Any wonder the Indian is the sort of mess Stephen. If a public servant stands there on a polling booth and has a photograph taken unpublished, you can clearly define that the public servant is opposing, so they're handing out for Labor against the government, and vice versa. You can clearly say that public servant doesn't support the government. I think this is a very disturbing finding in the same way I just described the last High Court finding as disturbing and needing to be looked at. I think this one needs to be looked at as well. The right to express political opinion outside of the workplace or inside in the Israel case are very important principles. But certainly the outside the workplace, I think, is absolutely got to be defended because Are we now saying a public servant cannot express their political views on the government on a polling booth by handing out for the opposition of the day? Because that is the logical consequence of this ruling. And I think Paul is dead right, Gary, dead right on this one.
All right, Pauline, what do you think?
Yeah.
All right, you can't compare freedom of speech with Israel Folau with this. He's playing football, totally different to having his opinion with religion. So his opinion with religion doesn't interfere with him playing a game of football. When you actually have someone working in an immigration department, which is a very contentious department, and has the views as she does, then I question her ability and to work in that department to the best of her ability compared to do with the policies of that government who is running that department. It's like in my political office, if I've got someone in my office who has the views of the Greenies and climate change, they are not going to assist my office to the best of their ability. They are going to undermine me with my policies and how they run my office. So no, it's a totally different issue. You can't compare that with Israel Folau.
All right, 2-2, Amanda Stoker.
That's my view.
You make the
Freedom of
final
speech,
call.
I'm all for, but not that.
Here.
Look, nobody likes freedom of speech more than me, but I do think you can distinguish the two cases. Today's High Court case involves somebody who is employed in a job that is inherently political, and they are giving comment on matters that are inherently political, not going to the core of their basic human rights, but their political beliefs, in a way that flies in the face of their role as an impartial officer of the Crown. In contrast, you've got Israel Folau, whose job is to play football, expressing a view that's consistent with his fundamental human rights in a way that is unconnected with his job. I think the two are apples and oranges, and they really aren't comparable cases whatsoever.
All right.
Can I just
agree with that
make
too.
one more point, OK?
All right, well, then Gary gets to make one more after that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It is well known that the head of Home Affairs is a former Labor Party staffer. Well known. He was Kim Beazley's deputy and possibly chief of staff at one point. I worked with him. That bloke, despite what his political views may be, does an excellent job without letting his political thoughts interfere, his personal private thoughts interfere in his doing his job on behalf of this government. So I don't think you can possibly... I accept Pauline's point about personal staff. I accept that absolutely, Pauline, you're dead right. But when it comes to the public service, there are thousands and thousands of public servants who professionally do their job no matter what they think of the policies they're implementing. And if they want to have a private view and stand on a polling booth, or I'm not on Twitter, but if they want to express themselves on Twitter, well, they should be entitled to.
But that said, we all agree you should have the balls not to do it anonymously. That's one thing you absolutely should be. Gary, I'm going to take a break. Give me a quick blast and then we're done.
Well, I mean, Paul, that's the point. I mean, is the head of Home Affairs tweeting against Peter Dutton? No, he's not. Is the former Deputy Secretary of the departments that I've been involved in, were they tweeting against me? No, they weren't. I mean, I get it. I understand that there are public servants who have a different political view to the Liberal Party. Heavens, it's Canberra, for God's sakes. But
they all do.
But, you know, it's exactly right. And you assume until otherwise. The difference is going out there and being narky and anonymous. You're not putting your name to it. If you're standing on a polling booth, your name's on it. If you're doing a narky anonymous account and bagging somebody, who knows if you've got inside running that you're using to your narky advantage. That's my point, Stephen. Don't misrepresent it.